Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Lyman, speaker, author, and coach, and he helps people between 45 and 75 forever experience the joy of good health and vitality. Welcome to the show, Al.
Thank you, AJ. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's rather it's early in the morning here in Florida, but I'm happy to be with you.
Absolutely. And those who rise early, are quite healthy, as they say. Right. So this is the thing that as long back you decided not to die unhealthy. You wanted to live properly, and that is where, for the understanding of the audience, Al, first to understand, whatever you are saying, help us understand how far you are qualified, or people should take your words as something from a qualified person or somebody who has done it all and has experienced these things that you are going to say, and they should look at it, all the advice that you are giving, in that light.
Well, thank you, AJ. I think certainly, my point of view is not, one of a researcher in the laboratory. I don't have a PhD in topics related to aging or longevity or lifespan. But I did make a conscious decision at 25 to die healthy. And what that really means is to live a full life free of disease and dysfunction, and then hopefully one day, very far off into the future, maybe at 110 or so, go to sleep and not wake up the next day. So this idea of extending our health span. I sit here at 63. So what I share with people now really reflects what I've learned over a lifetime of study, practical experience. I really have put into practice over the course of my adult life, more than 40 years now, the things that I talk about and the things that I learn. And I learn every day, as we all do, as the science continues to progress and move forward. I'm able to reflect on, what I'm learning, change my behaviors if I need to. But it really is, my perspective is definitely one where I'm sharing what I've lived. Because I literally have lived everything that I talk about, certainly what I share in my book, and so forth. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Al. It helps build up that understanding within the audience, you as well as me, as to exactly, who the person is, what he is talking about, and whether all these things he has learned on the ground, whether he knows about the things. And that in this age of chat GPTs, it is always better to get perspective from people who have done it, seen it, and are actually living it. And that is why your advice, your understanding of things, your sharing of things from your own life becomes that much easy. And you look very fit. You look quite young, I must say, Al. And that's as you said, nothing. The truth. The taste of the pudding lies in its eating. So everybody can see that. And that is, how do people, themselves, because age is something, when it starts catching up, people start to feel its impact. And many people just get accustomed to it. They say, okay, I've lived my life. Now I'm getting old. But many people like you, they look at it much more in a challenging manner, and they want to, as you said, you want to die healthy, and not to die unhealthy, or to die healthy. How can people start looking at aging in a positive manner, and where is it that they can start with?
Well, that's a great question, AJ. I think there are really two aspects to it from my point of view, and this is certainly what I hope to share with people that are listening. Is first is our mindset, which is the belief that we have the power to control how the second half of our life is going to play out, at least to some degree. Because I think many people just simply say it's going to be what it's going to be, as you alluded to, that I don't have any control over it, that, you know, that it's my genes or my DNA, my family history. But the reality is that the science shows us that we have tremendous power over much of what happens to us, our health outcomes. So it starts with belief. And then I think the second aspect is to begin to take action and start to make positive changes. And my advice is always to start really small. So certainly from a nutritional perspective, the foods we eat, we need to just focus on real food, because certainly processed industrialized food is absolutely ubiquitous in most societies in the world now. I think of them as big food. That is the big, large industrialized companies, and everywhere we look, processed food. So we've got to try to remove some of that from what we're eating, because it isn't good for us. It's usually loaded with excess processed sugars, which can really damage our health short and long term. So we start there. And my advice is always to start small, whether it's to begin to do some exercise, to start to change how we're eating, just tiny little changes, a little bit at a time, and then just try to be consistent with those. So if we try to bite off too much at one time, if we try to make too many, big changes, if we wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to be healthier today, and then we try to make, a large change and overhaul how we eat or the amount of exercise we're getting, the odds of continuing that, of keeping it going, are probably reduced. Tiny changes, but again, AJ, it starts with our belief systems. And how do we change the narrative in our minds? That's a challenge for each person. But it starts with at least opening ourselves up to learning and actually reflecting on what the science truly says, because certainly it's there. While there's certain mysteries about, of course, how our health actually flows out, why some people get sick and other people don't, the reality is there's much we do know about why these things happen. So we've got to learn, open our minds, and then take action. Nothing happens without taking action in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely, absolutely, Al. You have explained it very well. For a better understanding, help us understand this belief system. What is this belief system? Because in different cultures, it is quite different. So, how do a person who is not in the US but somewhere else, he tackles this belief system in his own manner? Because in several cultures, people at the age of 50 even become grandfathers, and then their belief system or their culture or the society starts making them feel that, okay, 50, you are a grandfather now, so you are old. But in actually, it is not. And because of this, all great things happening in science as well as medical science, people's longevity is going up. How do they start looking at aging for themselves as well as, in a way, society as a whole? So help us understand that. Secondly, when should people start looking at this aging effortlessly stuff? Should it be in their 20s, or should it be that when they hit their 40s?
Well, it's a great question, and I think it really begins with our own self-talk. Certainly when we learn from others who are experts in the field, one of the things we learn is that for most of us, we become the people we are based on the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. So we're as old as we think we are in many respects. It may sound a little cliche, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. So if we think in a more youthful way, if we're willing to still engage in play, if the stories we're telling ourselves about ourselves are such that, we're saying we're old, so there's not much we can do, and we really shouldn't go out there and run around, or, those aches and pains we have, those are just normal and natural. If that's the story that we're telling ourselves, then chances are it's going to manifest in our actual reality. But if the story we're telling ourselves is that we can be as young as we think, that we should continue to engage in things that, think sort of like a kid. I love the way that children think of these kinds of things. For example, a child is always present in the moment. They're not anxious about the past or nervous about the future. They're just present where they are, and they're fully engaged. So that's one simple way for people to really be more childlike, to just be really present and mindful where you are. But I think at the end of the day, it's all these messages that go inside our heads, and we have control over that. Sure, there's a lot of noise around us, and there are all kinds of messages coming at us. For example, big food, those industrialized food companies are telling us to eat, 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 eat. But the reality is we shouldn't necessarily be eating all of the time because it isn't necessarily good for us for many different reasons. So we can either listen to all the messages that are around us and allow those messages to have control over our behavior, or we can control what we're exposed to. And limit the noise and begin to, sort of work on our own messaging. What are we telling ourselves about ourselves? And work to try to change that messaging. And I'll certainly admit it's not easy, but the reality is that if we start small and just become aware, I think awareness is the first place to start. So if you're aware that you're saying to yourself, man, 50's old, and that pain I'm having in my low back, I guess that's normal. If you start by saying, wait a second, is that really true? Maybe it's not true. So maybe I need to use that awareness and begin to change that narrative inside my mind. And of course, the next step is always to try to take some action and sort of reinforce what it is that we may be learning about the stories we're telling ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Al. Well explained. Now, you talked about the food. A lot of people also talk about, supplements. It can be food supplements or even any other sort of a supplement for the body to be strong or young. Even nowadays, there are a lot of these talks about that you will be young forever with this sort of a drug or any other sort of a supplement. How should people look at that? What are your thoughts on this? What would you like to tell people on this?
Well, my first advice is always to focus on the basics and fundamentals first. Now, I'll fully admit that I think it's our human nature to try to look for a quick fix, right? To try to look for a Band-Aid to immediately address a problem or a symptom that we may have. The reality is there's plenty of companies out there that are very willing to offer us a Band-Aid to treat a symptom. I often say that the same companies that produce the products and the foods that end up getting us sick are the same companies that produce the drugs and other supplements to address the problems that their products created. So they're making money on both ends. So the reality is, I don't think we start with a supplement. I think the reality is that while there are certainly lots out there to consider, the way that I approach it with the clients that I work with in my own programs is I say, let's start with the basics and fundamentals first. Let's try to reduce processed food. Let's try to get a little bit of exercise. Let's look at reducing white light in the evening to reinforce better sleeping habits, create a better sleeping environment. Let's expose our eyes to sunlight earlier in the day to get in line with our circadian rhythms. Let's work on those stories that we're telling ourselves about how much control and power we actually have. These are all basics and fundamentals that don't involve taking a specific supplement. Once we've got a handle on some of those, then I think the next place to go is to do some good blood testing and begin to look at some biomarkers and see if maybe there is areas of opportunity where we may be deficient in one form or another. For example, we know that vitamin D is one particular nutrient that many people are deficient in, even those that are exposed to sunlight. Certainly, when we look at the diet, there can be instances where we like to eat certain kinds of foods, but maybe other kinds of foods we never eat, such as, maybe somebody doesn't like fish, so they never eat oysters or sardines or any other foods which happen to be really good sources of certain nutrients. So we start to look at the balance within the diet and see if maybe there's an opportunity for supplementation. And then on the extreme end, of course, there are many drugs now available. Certainly, there's lots of talk of the diabetes drug metformin, rapamycin, which is a drug that was originally discovered on Easter Island and is now an immunosuppressant. But certainly, there's discussions about utilizing these drugs to extend lifespan. But the reality is, to me, that's frosting on the cake. The cake itself, we got to bake the cake first before we worry about putting frosting on it. And the cake itself are these basics and fundamentals: good sleep, reducing bad stress, getting some good stress in the form of exercise, and reducing processed foods, and starting to eat a more balanced diet. I look at all of these aspects as areas of opportunity, and they're all a piece of the aging puzzle. So when we look at a puzzle, right, and there's all these pieces to a puzzle, my goal as a coach is to help people find out where the missing piece may be, so that we can make sure we're addressing every opportunity to try to give ourselves the best chance to live the longest and healthiest life.
Absolutely, absolutely, Al. You lay a lot of stress on this movement thing. So tell us about that. And also, you have got the beat coaching framework. Tell us about that, how it can help people, or it helps people, your clients, to be always, gracefully aging, as we can call it, and to die very, very healthy, if at all they have to die.
Thank you. Well, we're all certainly going to die someday. I don't think anybody in science has figured out. I think the really important thing that I always like to share is we can look at lifespan, which is the number of years we're alive. But I think anyone would agree, if you're sick or not feeling good or in pain or battling disease, nobody is interested in spending the last 20 years of their life suffering. So it's not so much about the years, but about the quality of the years. And of course, I fully admit I'd like to be here as long as possible, but I want to make sure the time that I'm here, that I'm as healthy as I can be. And I think what we're seeing today, certainly here in the United States, is that many people, the way I think of it, is that many people are dying slow deaths before their actual demise. They're suffering. There's a gradual decline in their health. So all of these things that of course I was seeing around me caused me to sit down one day and write a book. The book is called Age Well and Feel Great: The Proven Path to Solving the Aging Puzzle and Going the Distance. It's available on Amazon. It's available on my website. But I also, after writing the book, of course, I wanted to get out and speak more about these topics. But I also started, as you mentioned, this coaching program called Beat Aging Transformation. The word BEAT is an acronym for belief, encouragement, accountability, and taking action. So this is a 12-week program where I guide an individual person through 5 pillars: mindset, movement, food, rejuvenation, and reflection. If all of these pieces matter, as we've talked about a little bit. So in this 12-week program, I have an online portal, lots of videos for support, email, text messages, weekly coaching calls. And the idea is for me to be able to help someone by holding them, to some level of accountability. I'm there watching what they're doing, making sure they're checking the boxes, doing the things I'm asking them to do as I introduce them to new exercises, new ways to change their eating, and new ways to think about the aging journey wherever it is that they're starting. They always have the opportunity to improve, to change. It's never too late. So all of these things manifest in what I hope is a transformation, because it isn't about the 12 weeks that I spend together with an individual person. It's about the changes that they can make to their lifestyle, to how they think, that they can continue on and continue to improve on and grow. It's this idea that it really is the journey that, that we're looking at. It's the process. It's the daily habits. It's the little rituals that we pick up that change how we behave and how we think. That's the goal. So 12 weeks, it seems like either a long period of time or a very short period of time, depending on how you're looking at it. But the reality is, it's just the beginning for this particular person. So anybody that's interested in learning more about that program, they can go to one of my 2 websites. Sorry for the confusion, because I know the more websites you have, the more problems it is. But
no problem at all. I will include both of them on the show notes so that people can reach.
Thank you, AJ. It's so pursuitathleticperformance.com/beat aging is where folks can go just to learn a little bit more about that program. And if they're interested, they can certainly set up a call with me to discuss perhaps if the program is a good fit for them.
Absolutely. There is so much to learn from you out of your experience, even about learning itself. After you had a near fatal sort of an accident when you were trying to learn swimming at the age of 10, and then you learned swimming at the age of 36, if I'm correct. What would you like to tell those people who are a bit wary about learning itself, that I'm too old to start learning? How would you like to tell them about learning about aging gracefully and effortlessly? How to begin, when to begin, and if they are not too old to begin?
Well, that's a great question. I think in simple terms, you have to face your fears. The thing that you're afraid of doing is exactly the thing you have to do, within reason, of course, right? It's a challenge. There have been many books that have been written about the differences between having a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So again, it comes back, AJ, to this idea of what are the stories that we're telling ourselves? If you're telling yourself at 50 that you can't change your life, that your health is going to be what it's going to be, that your parents had this or that disease, and so you were going to have it too. If that's the story you're telling yourself, then chances are it might manifest in reality, even though your genes may have very little to actually do with it. It's much more about the habits every single day. So again, it comes back to this idea of, if you're willing to open your mind and say, you know what, I'm going to try this. It's never too late, right? I can do this. Yes. And certainly I had this near fatal drowning at 10. I decided after, watching the Ironman on TV with my daughter that I was going to, go do the Ironman, which was ludicrous at the time. It was more a wish or a dream than something that could have thought was ever going to happen. I hadn't been in water for 26 years any deeper than really waist deep. But I had this vision and I had this dream, and I was compelled to just move forward and try. And it was challenging. The reality is, one of the things I say in the book, AJ, is you have to choose your hard, right? There's no such thing as a life without some kind of hard. Author Mark Manson always says, that the goal in life is not to have any problems. The goal in life is to have good problems, not bad problems, right? So when you embark on something that gives you at least the opportunity to grow and change, you have a little bit more of a youthful mindset. Now you're looking toward the future. You're not lamenting the past. What's happened in the past is in the past. There's a reason in your, why your car has a tiny little rear view mirror, but a big windshield, because you're going forward, not backward, right? So I think this idea of opening yourself to the possibilities which may exist if you can first believe, and then secondly, take some action toward that end. Surround yourself with support people, right? And of course, having a book like mine or many others that you can read. I mean, in my book, there's a lot of inspirational stories. There's lots of inspirational quotes. I wanted the book to be inspiring and easy to read. And I'm very transparent in the book. I share all of, all my warts and all the mistakes I've made. Hopefully the reader can learn from those and grow and benefit. So there are endless possibilities. Sure, we need a little good fortune too, but I absolutely believe, as so many have told us and showed us before, is that when we work hard, when we accept the challenges, when we decide to make changes and live, for the future, that we can create a little bit better luck for ourselves. And again, with a little good fortune, perhaps we can create our best life in the process.
Wonderful. With these words of great wisdom, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, AJ.